Good morning, my beloveds. It's wonderful to be in worship with you again today. Thank you for coming to share this time with me, even in this virtual way. And I hope that you enjoy rethinking about the gospel and thinking about it fresh. It's interesting that a couple of weeks ago, as I read the gospel lesson, where we were talking about the miraculous feeding of the multitudes, I tripped over a thought. Well, actually, it was a question I just kept asking myself. From where did the 12 baskets come to hold what was left over after the multitude was fed? I did not, and I do not have an answer to that question, but it keeps rumbling around in my head anyway. Maybe there isn't an answer because it's not really the question to be asking. So I've begun thinking afresh about the story as I prepared for today. I just couldn't shake it loose from my thoughts. I mean, has that ever happened to you? A thought gets in there and just won't let go? I'll be honest, it happens to me regularly. So I reread the gospel passages that tell about the feeding of the multitudes in light of this passage from John, which we shared today. I thought a little about the 12 baskets and then found myself wondering about all those people who had experienced that lunch on the mountainside. Now, it wasn't that long ago, having been raised in faith through the witness of this gospel passage, I would have preached that God multiplied the young boy's lunch and fed everyone. But today, new colleagues in ministry have challenged me to think about how the generosity of that young boy, along with the blessing that Jesus gave, moved others to break out their stuff and share it in God's name to feed everyone. Kind of like a church potluck lunch, don't you think? And I, for one, have never gone away from one less than full. Have you? So, which is the correct perspective? I would have to say, does it matter in the face of the miraculous? Yet most people are not usually satisfied by unanswered questions. So in today's gospel, I'm not surprised to read that some people were not satisfied. They saw that Jesus and the disciples had gone, so they got into their own boats and crossed the lake to Capernaum as well. When they found him, they asked, "Rabbi, why did you come here?" But really, behind that question were other questions, like, what we had over on that side was not enough for you? What do we need to be doing to keep you around and to maintain your visible presence so that we will draw others to our place as well? And finally, when they were not satisfied by the answers, they went for the big one. Well, if you're not going to stick around, what signs are you going to give us that we will believe even when we do not have you with us? You've not given us the right signs yet that will keep us coming back. When will we get the right signs that will let us trust that God is with us? Actually, I believe that one to be an important question for the people of the church to ask today, even though it's frustrating to hear it spoken out loud. We must be willing to explore our future as a pastoral charge to get a sense of what it may hold as we experience our ability to sustain our ministry in buildings with so many levels of energy declining. There's no doubt in my mind that we've been well fed over the decades. We've eaten well, and we have collected 12 baskets full many times over from the generosity of God's abundance. But today, we sense an absence, a scarcity, and we want a transformation to be visited upon us. Even today, we seem to seek out Jesus and ask, give us a sign that we might be sustained and renewed. I mean, we seek out our church leaders and lay our fears at their feet, expecting that somehow from somewhere salvation of the church as we've known it will be dropped into our waiting hands. But that task is just too much for even the greatest leader you have ever known to simply do it for us. And anyway, why are we seeking a Savior who is just a human? Maybe once again we're asking the wrong question. Maybe we need to be asking, or rather we need to be praying, that our congregations be renewed as our people notice anew God's continuing presence in our midst. Maybe in a time such as this, it's right and the best way to begin, because renewal implies that we once knew how to do this. One of our challenges will be to recall the moments when our church was really being church. We need to remember those moments when God seemed so present, so real, that healing and hope were ever present. Now, you know me by now, and I love stories, and I've got a great one from Anthony DeMello's book, Taking Flight. He offers this story. There once was a woman who was very devout and filled with love for God, and each morning she would go to church. And on her way, children would call out to her and beggars would accost her. But so immersed was she in her devotion that she did not even see them. Now, one day, she walked down the street in her customary manner and arrived at the church just in time for service. She pushed the door, but it wouldn't open. She pushed it harder and found the door was locked. Distressed at the thought that she would miss service for the first time in years and not knowing what to do, she sighed and she looked up. There, right before her face, she found a note pinned to the door. It read, "I'm out there." Today, we need to ask, what is the fundamental purpose of who we are as people of God? What difference are we called to make in this area of God's kingdom? And what difference do we feel God is calling us to make in the lives of our members? You know, if we got the answers to those questions figured out and then did them, a lot of our fear would probably melt away. I know that we've all speculated if we do not do something, we will have to cut back. Who knows, potentially service to our elders would be limited. We might even cease to be a church congregation in this place. But the bottom line is that really what we are afraid of is we might die. But what if we could change our fear of death into a longing for life? Ernest Sotheon gives us a quote that has the potential for being life-changing, most certainly church-changing, if taken to heart and used as a model for action. He says, "The holiest moment of the church service comes when God's people, strengthened by word and sacrament, go out into the world to be the church." You don't go to church, you are the church. Or have we become like the devout woman of the story where we stumble past the church on the way to a building we've labeled as such? From where did the 12 baskets come to hold what was left over after the multitude was fed? I do not have that answer. But I do know that Jesus said, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." That promise alone is the simple truth of what Jesus offers to us. Through our faith, our needs will be met. But my beloveds, remember, nowhere in that promise did it say that we could just stand idly by while the answer to our needs is dropped in our waiting hands. My mother used to say, pray to God, but Heidi Renee, row towards shore. Jesus fed the 5,000, and he feeds us today with God's Spirit. But if we eat of what he offers, we must be prepared to see where the Spirit leads us, and we must be willing to make the changes it will take to get there. Now, I can hear someone say at this point, okay, Pastor, what changes? You know how we feel about changes. Well, I don't have that answer either, but I figure if we can get there, hold on, and take joy in where God calls us, then our joy will be multiplied. Somewhere beyond that place, we will be so immersed in being God's people and doing God's will that our energy and joy will be beyond our expectation. And my beloveds, from where will the 12 baskets come to hold what will be left over then? I hope that this week ahead fills you with the love of God and the energy to start looking for baskets. Peace be with you, my beloveds.